In today's plate of history beans, we'll take a quick look at the Penateka Comanche. Some folks hear the word Comanche and they imagine a large homogeneous group of people living in one place. In a previous plate of history beans, I spoke of how the Comanche, at the height of their influence, held sway over a large area that encompassed parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, New Mexico, and half of Texas. They even raided into the southern parts of Mexico. There were a number of notable subgroups within the Comanche Nation. One of the greatest of those groups were called the Penateka, or honey eaters. The Penateka were the southernmost band of Comanche and lived primarily near or within current-day Kerr County to the northwest of San Antonio. Because the Comanche were a nomadic people, it's hard to pinpoint an exact spot where they lived, but we know one of their settlements at times was located near Bandera Pass, a few miles south of Kerrville, Texas. Because of their location, the Penateka people were some of the first Comanche to come in conflict with white settlers. The most famous of all Comanche, Quanah Parker, was born among the Penateka, the son of Penateka, a Comanche chief, and a white woman taken as a child by the Penateka, Cynthia Ann Parker. Quanah would later move to the Texas Panhandle and become a part of the Quahada Comanche. One of the most notable of the Penateka people, a man who predates Quanah by 2 generations or so, was Buffalo Hump. Buffalo Hump led his band of Penateka in hundreds of small raids in the central Texas region and was present in a leadership role at 3 of the most notable Indian battles in the history of the Old West. The first of those battles is sometimes called the Massacre or Battle of the Council House, where a number of Comanche leaders were slaughtered by whites after meeting in San Antonio to negotiate a treaty to reduce the number of raids. In Unending Charm, I mentioned Matilda Lockhart. The Council House slaughter happened because the Penateka, in good faith, were returning Matilda as part of their negotiations. The whites had different expectations, however. They thought there would be more children returned at the meeting, but they didn't understand that the Penateka present had no control over what the other bands of Comanches did with their captives. Consequently, white soldiers opened fire through windows into a small room and killed 35 Comanche chiefs. Consequent to the Council House massacre, Comanches never trusted whites again. Buffalo Hump, along with other Penateka leaders and other Comanche groups, intensified their raids for the next 10 years. Buffalo Hump led what is sometimes called the Great Raid of 1940. It's a really interesting story. Buffalo Hump dreamed that he would make it to the coast and push the white people off into the water and they would never return again. Well, that obviously didn't happen, but with over 400 or perhaps more Comanche warriors, they drove all the way to the Texas coast and they conducted several raids around current-day Linville and Victoria, Texas. They stole an estimated 1,500 horses and killed dozens of whites and slaves and burned a couple of small settlements to the ground. Consequent to the Great Raid, Texas forces redoubled their efforts against the great Penateka chief, specifically Buffalo Hump, and what was called the Battle of Plum Creek. By the late 1850s, the Penateka were largely subdued and moved to a reservation in southwest Oklahoma. But that didn't end the Comanche raiding. There were still lots of other groups of Comanche in the state. However, over the next 25 years, whites would gradually subdue and relocate Comanche groups, moving northward until the last bunch, the Quahada, were subdued in the mid-1870s. That's it for today's plate of history beans. I'll have another bit of history from the Old West related to my book hunting charm next week. As always, if you like my content, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. If you're following my story hunting charm and you're interested in a copy of the book, they are available on Amazon. I'll have a link for that in the space below, or you can leave a comment and I will send you a signed copy for a small fee. Again, any support is appreciated. Now it's time for Chapter 16 of Hunting Charm here on the Contemporary Old West with B.F. Biles. Hunting Charm, Chapter 16, A Strange Dream. Hunter, you figure those boys are gone? Matt asked. I reckon they probably are, Brent said. I killed one of them, though. Hunter, he shot you. You had no choice. I suspect the older men will be looking for retribution. Maybe so, Matt said. I know you've heard stories about these folks, Matt. That Linville massacre and gals kidnapped and disfigured or killed. These folks have different ways. Quanah's own mother is white, and the story is she refused to leave her Indian family. There's good and bad in everyone. But some of those stories... What was that gal's name that had her nose burned off? Matilda Lockhart. I know, Brent. The stories are terrible. You know that fella I write to sometimes, Crater McLean? He says these folks do those things as part of their culture. He says they expect white folks would do the same to them if given the chance. Yeah, but we wouldn't. We don't kidnap children and then torture them. Matt nodded. I don't understand it, but Crater has had dealings with these folks. He fought against Buffalo Hump. He was at Plum Creek and was involved with all that business with the Penateka bunch. Like I say, I just don't know. I need to take a leak. I'd hold it until dark if I could. I just don't understand how you figure we can trust these folks. I go on my gut and what I know. Like this situation, Quanah has shown he's reasonable at times. I can't believe he would sanction what these boys did. Maybe he didn't know. It's not like these folks have any central government. Old Kit Carson learned that, sure enough. Quanah was a boy when that happened. Okay, well, what about Salt Creek? Hunter, you're right, okay? The stories on Quanah are mixed. From what I understand, though, these disputes are over killing buffalo. Maybe he just doesn't like white folks. His mama is white. He's half white man. If I understand the situation, buffalo hunters have been coming in, killing off the herds, and that's at least part of it. You don't just go killing a man's stock and expect him to take kindly to it. Matt, we need to move on. I'm serious now. Quanah didn't send these boys in here. He isn't the type of man who sends out a group of boys to do a man's job. Plus, Sam said that was Peter Nakona here the other day. That's Quanah's father. If Quanah wanted us killed, he'd do it himself. According to the papers, Nakona died on the reservation. The papers get things wrong sometimes. Well, he might kill us yet. Maybe so. What do you figure on doing if Quanah comes in here with a couple of hundred braves? Pray I get killed fast. The afternoon sun shone relentlessly, but Brant had chosen the spot for his fort wisely. Towering elms provided shade, and the riverbed channeled a southwesterly breeze into their makeshift fortress. The hypnotic chirring of grasshoppers and sound of the gentle current flowing by were like a lullaby. Wake up! Huh? What? Keep your head down and look over yonder. Matt pointed. I must have fallen asleep, and I reckon you did too. Peering at, Brant immediately saw the reason for Matt's concern. 50 or 60 feet away, uncomfortably close, a group of Comanche warriors, some mounted, all well armed, stood talking among themselves. Brant could see that some of the boys from earlier sat on the ground to one side. One of the older men towered over them, lecturing. "That there is Sam and Nakona," Matt whispered. "One of those riders must be Quanah. The boys are with them. They must know we're over here. I think they're waiting for us to say something." Matt stood up. "Hello, gentlemen," he called out. "Dang it, Matt," Brant hissed. "You might let me get my weapon ready." The group of native warriors turned, including the man lecturing the boys. After a few words among themselves, one of the native warriors stepped forward. "These boys made a foolish decision. They thought they might kill you and take your things. We are here to parley, not to fight." Matt stood, easing himself up and onto one of the logs surrounding their fortress. "We're sorry about the young man. It wasn't our intention to shoot anyone. He came at me suddenly and I shot him." Brant stepped from the hole as well, placing his pistol carefully on the ground. "It wasn't my choice to kill him. He is the son of Tall Tree." The speaker for the group pointed to one of the warriors, a powerful-looking man with broad shoulders who gazed at Brant with a neutral expression. "The boy died as a warrior. His death will not be held against you. You are safe." "My name is Matt Grayson, and this here is my partner, Hunter Brantley." "I am Isate," the speaker replied. "Perhaps we can sit more comfortably and talk." He gestured to the circle of logs. "We're here to ask about some white men. 2 big men in a wagon that passed through here about 4 weeks ago." Matt walked toward the group, Brant following. "The Fat Brothers, yes, we remember them. We will answer your questions, but not here. We will ride with Quanah to our camp." Isate pointed to a tall warrior who sat astride a black stallion. "This won't take 10 minutes, Matt said. "We don't want to trouble you." "No." Quanah looked at Matt with a steady gaze, then spoke rapidly in his native tongue. "Quanah says we won't answer your questions here. You must come to our camp. There is something you must do there." Matt paused, then nodded. "We appreciate your offer, but we really need to get on the trail. When I spoke to Sam and Nakona, I promised I would give Quanah a pistol." "The tall white man is hunting something," Isate said, looking at Brant. "Peter will help him with his search." "I'm sorry," Matt said. "We will answer your questions about the Fat Brothers, but there is another matter. Peter has something important for your partner." Isate pointed at Brant. "In the past few years, a man named Mackenzie killed many of our people. He drove us like cattle onto the reservation. But our dreams began to die there. Our spirits lost power. Here, our vision returns. Peter Nakona saw the tall white man in his dreams and learned your fate is tied to our own. Nakona says you will be there with the people when the world ends." "What does Peter mean by that?" Matt asked. "We understand that our ways are different," Isate continued. "Quanah will not answer your questions here, but you are safe. You are our guests. Please gather your things so we may travel to our homes." "How far is your camp?" "It isn't far. We will arrive there tomorrow." They packed quickly and, trailing Quanah's group, rode for the remainder of the day. Around sunset, they made camp on an outcropping of sandstone near a wide playa lake that reflected the heavens so perfectly one could hardly tell where the water ended and the skies began. The Comanche warriors started cooking fires. They feasted on prairie grouse, rabbit, and a bitter hardtack of juniper berries and nuts. Matt suggested they forego the tents and, like the native warriors, sleep beneath the stars. They woke early and traveled through the day, stopping occasionally at streams or playa lakes to water their mounts. Around mid-afternoon, they came to a sprawling canyon. Matt had heard stories of a great canyon in the Texas Panhandle, but was astounded gazing down at the tremendous hole. The canyon was vast, stretching for miles. Red dirt escarpments like the folds of a Spanish festival dress adorned the hillsides. Far below, like pins on a map, dozens of teepees stood alongside a river that snaked away into the distance. "This must be their main camp," Matt said. "We may be the first white folks to see this place." Brant, uneasy at the thought of entering such a large settlement of Comanches, pointed towards Quanah and Isate. "We sure these folks are friendly?" he asked. "There's only one way to find out." Matt eased his mount closer to Quanah and Isate. "My people." Quanah motioned toward the village below and with a sweep of his arm said, "Our home." "It's magnificent," Matt said. "I imagine you have several hundred folks out here." "We tried to live on the white man's reservation in Oklahoma," Isate said. "We were given rotten blankets and spoiled food in exchange for peace. Our people, the Quahada, could not live in that way. We do not care for the white man's stinking blankets or their potatoes covered with mold. Mackenzie can come and kill us all. We would rather die here." Quanah spoke to Isate for a long moment, then looked into Brant's eyes, holding his gaze as Isate translated. "Quanah says white men pretend to have great kind hearts. He thinks they mean well, but they claim things for their own that are not theirs. My people don't understand why they must leave. White men are not living here. It is only us. This has always been our home. Mackenzie says this is Texas, but we are only people. There are no Texans. We do not know any Texans, so we will remain here until Mackenzie or these Texans force us to go. We are not the bringers of war and death. That is the white man. Why is it so important to Mackenzie and the Texans to take our homes?" Quanah dismounted and pulled a small cluster of yellow flowers from the ground. Again he spoke to Isate, gesturing first at the flowers, then sweeping his arm across the horizon and skies. "This flower is like the white man. They spread and cover the world. The white man may take all that we have, but you cannot have our spirits. You will be safe here, for Quanah assures your protection. Still, you must not expect my people to express their love." Matt dismounted, stepping to Quanah's side, gazing at the tiny flowers in the chief's hand. "We appreciate your hospitality. Quanah thinks the white men could learn from the people," Isate continued, translating as Quanah spoke. "He thinks white men believe they are civilized, But despite their plows and axes and guns, the people are more human. Brant, listening, felt the moment might be right for a drink. He reached back and pulled the bottle of scotch from his saddlebag. Matt looked at him sternly. "Hunter, not right now." "I was just trying to be friendly." Brant felt a bit let down, sensing that once again his actions were inappropriate. It seemed to be the story of his life. Nevertheless, both Isate and Quanah nodded at the sight of the bottle. "The chief and his translator don't seem to be offended," Brant said. Sensing Quanah's interest, Matt gave a nod, took the bottle, and passed it to the chief. "Brant's right. Let's have a toast to our friendship," he said. Quanah paused for a moment, grinned at Matt, and took the bottle. He peered at the amber fluid, raised the drink to his mouth, and took a long pull. The proud warrior winced, then nodded in satisfaction. "Good," he said. Quanah passed the bottle to Matt, who said, "Well, I reckon having a little sip won't hurt none." Matt passed the bottle back to Brant, who took only a small sip before passing it on to Isate. Quanah said a few more words, and Isate turned once again to translate. "Quanah says tonight we will drink plenty and enjoy time as brothers." "That sounds like a fine idea," Matt replied.